Everyone else had someone cheering. I had a front row seat with a name card, and no one sitting there. The announcer's voice echoed across the university quad, crisp against the spring air. Applause erupted with every name called, growing louder or quieter depending on which proud family occupied the folding chairs lining the rows. It was a sea of camera flashes, flower bouquets, and teary parents leaning into one another, hands clutching programs like holy scripts. My gown was too warm and the fabric scratched at the back of my neck. I shifted my weight from foot to foot in the line, tugging my cap down as if that would make me smaller, safer, invisible. I scanned the front row again just to be sure. There it was, the third seat from the left. A placard balanced on the back of the chair, Mr. and Mrs. Collins. The font was elegant, serif, professional. I had filled it out myself online weeks ago when I was still pretending they might come. The seat was empty. Had been empty since I arrived. A flash of movement caught the corner of my eye. Ethan Callahan slid into line behind me, his blue and gold honor cords obnoxiously bright in the sunlight. "Guess they couldn't make it to clap for code?" he muttered, barely loud enough to be heard. My fists clenched beneath the sleeves of my gown. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My voice would have cracked, and that's worse than silence. That gives people something to chew on. When my name echoed through the loudspeaker, Avery Collins, Bachelor of Computer Science, magna cum laude, I stepped forward with a spine made of splinters. Every movement felt mechanical up the steps across the platform, hand out, smile. There was polite applause, kind, distant. No personal cheers. No one standing up or waving. No camera flash, just for me. Dean Matthews extended his hand, his expression measured, polite. But when our palms touched, something passed between us. Not energy information. His eyes lingered a fraction too long, curious, knowing. And then he gave me the faintest nod as if to say, soon. It rattled me. I descended the steps, diploma in hand, and returned to my row like everyone else. But the moment I sat down, I felt like I'd never belonged less in a crowd. Not because no one was there for me, I'd grown used to that. It was the way the whole event assumed every seat was full, every heart whole, every story tidy. The sun beamed down on that empty chair like it was highlighting an error in red ink. I should have left the space blank. Should have typed NA on the form. Instead, I left a seat for ghosts. The ceremony dragged. The university president gave a speech about legacy. Someone quoted Mandela. Another person cried on stage and thanked their dog. My attention faded in and out. I chewed the inside of my cheek until it stung. When the final name was called, caps flew. People screamed. Hugs collided. I didn't throw mine. I stayed still, clutching the diploma tube in both hands like it might vanish if I let go. People were already posing for photos, some crying from joy, others from nostalgia. I moved through them like fog. Nobody called my name. Nobody pulled me in for a picture. Behind the science building, I leaned against a tree, its bark pressing into my spine, and pulled out my phone. Notifications rolled in: group chat, congratulations from classmates, a ping from my apartment complex, one email marked important. I ignored them all. Then a new message popped up. Dad. The contact photo was still blank. No heart, no custom icon. Just the gray silhouette of a man who used to lift me onto his shoulders at swim meets. The text was short. One sentence. No punctuation, no hesitation. You made your choice. So did we. I read it once, twice. The air left my lungs so quietly it didn't make a sound. Every single view means a meal for someone in need. Just by watching this video, you're giving warmth, hope, and a full plate to those less fortunate. So watch now, share now, subscribe to the channel, and let's spread love together. Olivia was the blueprint. I was the glitch in the system. There were crystal glasses on the table lined like soldiers, their long stems catching the overhead chandeliers. The whole place reeked of money, quiet generational golf club money. It was December in Boston, snow melting in the corners of the window panes. But inside the private dining room at the Fairhaven Club, everything was perfectly heated and perfectly polished. We were celebrating Olivia's MBA graduation from Wharton. My parents had flown in early, booked the best room, requested the best table. The maitre d' greeted them by name. No one asked if I needed a ride. Olivia looked radiant. She always did. Her makeup was subtle professional, her posture precise. Every movement of hers looked planned, practiced. My mother said it was ballet. I always thought it was something deeper, like she'd internalized a metronome that kept her in perfect tempo with other people's expectations. My father toasted her within 5 minutes of sitting down. To the one who carried the torch forward. To the Collins name living on in the financial capitals of the world. He raised his glass high, his other hand resting proudly on Olivia's shoulder. She smiled, modest, glowing. My mother dabbed the corner of her eye. No one looked at me. The waiter brought out oysters first. Then lamb. I picked at the quinoa pilaf, counting the seconds until I could go. Olivia spoke about her summer internship at Morgan Thorne and how she'd be joining full-time in January. The table buzzed with approving nods. My father asked questions about the firm's partners, about strategy. My mother talked about brunches she'd attend with the wives. It was like watching synchronized swimming. At some point, I cleared my throat. I filed a provisional patent, I said, trying to keep my voice even. It's for a learning interface, an adaptive AI module for neurodivergent students. I call it Nova Learn. There was a pause. My fork hit the plate with a soft clink. My father didn't even glance at me. Software fluff, he muttered. Kids and their apps. It's not an app, I said too quickly. It's an architecture, a system. Unless you go to law school, stop pretending you're one of us, he said, slicing into his lamb without looking up. The meat bled into the potatoes. I felt Olivia stiffen beside me. She didn't speak. She didn't defend. She didn't even make eye contact. My mother shifted the conversation back to champagne brands. I waited 5 more minutes, just long enough not to make it a scene, then placed my napkin on the table and excused myself. My chair scraped softly against the hardwood. No one tried to stop me. Outside, the wind cut through my coat like it had teeth. Snow flurried sideways across the street, coating the cab windows as I rode back to campus in silence. In my dorm room, the light above my desk buzzed faintly. I didn't take off my coat. I didn't cry. I opened my laptop. The screen lit up cold and blue. I pulled a legal pad from the drawer and began sketching wireframes, menu systems, dashboard logic, accessibility toggles. My fingers moved without hesitation. This was the only space where I felt precise, fluid, valid. I worked for hours through the hum of the radiator and the soft thud of snow against the windows. I wasn't thinking about dinner anymore, or Olivia, or the lamb bleeding on porcelain. I was thinking about design that made room for the invisible student, the one no teacher knew how to reach, the one who didn't sit at the front table, the one who learned in silence alone. Around 3 a.m., I opened the student portal and clicked on the registrar tab. Name change request. A blinking cursor waited for me just under the instructions. Please type your preferred display name for academic records. I typed slowly. Avery B. I hesitated only once, then hit submit. A clean white confirmation banner slid across the screen. Avery clicked submit on her legal name change, Avery B dropping Collins from her school records. By day, I was just a student. By night, I was building the one thing no one believed I could. While others went home for winter break, I stayed. The dorms were half-shuttered, echoing and drafty, the kind of silence that made you hyper-aware of your own breathing. I moved through the shadows of Westbridge's engineering building like a ghost with a student ID badge. My keycard still worked, and that was all I needed. In Lab 4B, surrounded by unplugged printers and dead monitors, I brought NovaLearn to life. The prototype had started as a UI sketch in a legal pad, then became a wireframe, then a living program that pulsed with responsiveness. I fed it behavioral learning models layered in neurodiversity flags, coded decision trees that adjusted difficulty tone pacing. My fingers ached every night from hours of typing, but I didn't stop. No one was watching, which made it perfect. Professor Bennett was the first faculty member who didn't treat me like Olivia's underachieving sister. He found me one morning asleep at my keyboard, face down in documentation printouts. Instead of asking why I hadn't gone home for Christmas, he asked, "What does it do?" I showed him. He didn't say much that day, but a week later, he slid a contact across the table. Someone from an experimental VC fund focused on disruptive education tech. "I didn't pitch you," he said. "I just told them you exist." 3 Zoom calls and 2 encrypted file transfers. Later, they offered me a deal, $500,000 in seed funding. No equity dilution, just one condition: anonymity. Their logic was simple. NovaLearn had to be about the product, not the person. Clean press, no distractions, no family name to attract noise or lawsuits. I signed the papers the same night. My hand barely trembled. NovaLearn Technologies LLC was incorporated from a worn-out desk in my dorm room under the legal name Avery B. I ordered the documents to be mailed to a P.O. box downtown. I didn't even tell Alex until a week later. Alex was one of the few people I trusted with the back-end code, sharp, a little chaotic, but brilliant. We didn't talk much outside of tech. He didn't ask about my past, and I didn't ask about his. That was how I liked it. While the rest of the school gossiped about job offers and grad school apps, I quietly laid the groundwork for something else: the Collins Legacy Innovation Award. The name was deliberate, calculated. I told myself it was poetic justice, an award bearing the family name that once refused to acknowledge mine. The irony made it feel right. Sharp, even. The funding came from NovaLearn's discretionary pool. I worked with a legal aid from the VC group to draw up foundation terms, eligibility tied to tech ethics academic initiative, and a demonstrated commitment to underserved learners. One clause required special authorization: all donors and founders were to remain anonymous unless disclosed by the university's dean. Dean Matthews had seen the name Collins before. He'd nodded at graduation for a reason. Everything was ready. I stared at the digital form for hours before entering the first applicant for the upcoming scholarship cycle. The name appeared in a soft gray box cursor, blinking, waiting. I typed it slowly, carefully. Ethan Callahan. I hit submit. She enters Ethan's name as top applicant for the scholarship, knowing it will mislead. At Olivia's celebration dinner, I was the garnish, not the guest. The room glowed like it had been lit for royalty. Low chandeliers bathed everything in gold, turning champagne into liquid sunlight and people into silhouettes of sophistication. Velvet chairs hugged long tables dressed in white linen, each place, setting armed with 3 forks and a chilled salad plate like it was preparing for war. Boston in March was gray and indecisive outside, but here, inside the Alden Private Club, everything sparkled with the illusion of permanence. Olivia floated through the room in a navy sheath dress and diamond earrings so delicate they looked borrowed. Maybe they were. Evelyn whispered something to her, something about posture, and Olivia adjusted her chin by half a degree. I arrived 10 minutes early and still felt late. My dress was simple navy like Olivia's, but mine was polyester thrift, hers probably silk. I sat at the far end of the table, 2 chairs away from the family cluster, across from a silent intern, and next to a woman I didn't know who kept calling me Andrea. The waiter poured sparkling water into my glass without asking. No one asked if I wanted wine. Guests rotated around Olivia like planets, each one offering congratulations, compliments, and more than once a business card. Wall Street partners, Wharton professors, someone from Bain. They were all drawn to the name Collins, but only the branch that glittered. A man in a striped tie leaned across Evelyn, smiling warmly. "And your other daughter?" he asked, glancing down the table toward me. Evelyn paused just for a second too long. "She does computers?" she said, lifting her napkin to her lap. I smiled. I think I smiled. I must have. I chewed a sliver of asparagus so slowly it turned bitter. Gregory rose midway through the second course, tapping a dessert fork against his wineglass. The room fell quiet with the kind of reverence usually reserved for senators or CEOs, or fathers who believed they were both. He cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us to honor my daughter, our daughter, Olivia Collins, as she steps into the world to carry the Collins name into new arenas of power and legacy." Everyone applauded. I drank from my water glass like it held something stronger. "We raise our children to reflect who we are," he continued. "And today I stand here proud to say our vision, our values. They are alive and well." The woman beside me said beautiful under her breath. I kept my eyes on my plate. When dessert came, Olivia's was topped with edible gold leaf. Mine wasn't. Later, as the guests mingled by the fireplace, I pulled a flash drive from my purse and turned it over in my hand. I'd just filed another provisional patent, this one more efficient, more adaptive, and smarter than anything NovaLearn had done before. No one asked what I'd been working on. That was fine. I stood alone near the exit, debating how long I needed to wait before slipping out unnoticed. The night was almost over when I heard Gregory's voice again, this time loud, intentional for a nearby guest. "We only have one child who carries the Collins standard," he said, lifting his glass in Olivia's direction. I didn't turn around. I didn't react. I walked out into the Boston cold with my heels sinking slightly into the cobblestones, my coat buttoned up to the throat. The valet ignored me at first. I didn't mind. It gave me a second to take out my phone. The screen glowed white against the night. I opened the email draft addressed to the university's finance office. The subject line was already filled in final release terms: Collins Legacy Innovation Award. I typed a single sentence into the body: "Please keep my name hidden until the ceremony." Then I hit send. "Please keep my name hidden until the ceremony." They erased me from the family photo, but their name is on my scholarship. The university's legal office was smaller than I imagined. No mahogany shelves or sweeping views, just two desks, muted lighting, and an industrial printer that groaned like it was dying slowly. The walls were off-white and bare, save for a framed photo of the Westbridge seal balanced slightly crooked. I sat across from the associate counsel, a woman named Marla, who wore tortoiseshell glasses and spoke in clipped, efficient tones. "These are the final terms," she said, placing a slim folder in front of me. "We've filed the donation under a shell entity that traces to NovaLearn Technologies. No personal attribution will be made unless Dean Matthews exercises disclosure rights, which are outlined in Clause 12. I flipped to Clause 12. I had it memorized. "What happens if the dean never exercises them?" I asked, knowing the answer. "Then you remain anonymous," she said. "Publicly, at least. Internally, your name is tied to the award for audit compliance, but access is limited." Perfect. I signed without hesitation. The Collins Legacy Innovation Award was real, now funded, filed, and visible in the university's internal database. $2 million set aside for students working on socially driven tech, regardless of GPA, major, or financial need. I'd spent weeks crafting the eligibility criteria with legal. Every line mattered. Every word made room for people like me, the outliers, the overlooked, the ones no one applauded for. We'd finalized the scoring matrix the week before. GPA counted for 20%. The rest hinged on measurable innovation, community relevance, and a proposal reviewed by a rotating panel. In short, it was a trap, beautiful and fair and irresistible. A trap for Ethan Callahan. His name showed up first in the automated report run by the selection committee. His GPA was pristine, his attendance records spotless, but when it came to impact, his file was blank. Dean Matthews called me in that afternoon. His office was warmer than legal's, but only just. The blinds were open, letting in April sunlight that fell in slants across the hardwood. Commencement was 6 weeks away, and you could feel it in the air. Capstone tension seniors in pressed suits, anxiety dressed up as ambition. He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. Sit. I did. I read your impact clause 3 times, he said, tapping a pen against a notepad. You've built more than a scholarship. This will change lives. I felt a flutter of something like pride, or maybe it was just relief. You understand this isn't just about generosity, he continued. This fund sets precedent. It rewrites how we think about merit. That's the idea, I said. He leaned back. And if the world finds out it was you, I didn't hesitate. Then they'll know I didn't need their approval. Just their name. He nodded slowly. There was something behind his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or regret. I stood to leave but paused at the threshold. There was a rustling from the printer outside, paper sliding into the outbox. Dean Matthews called after me. You'll be in the room, I hope. For commencement, I asked. He nodded. I wouldn't miss it. I stepped into the hallway, pulse even, heels soft against the tile. I passed a row of student workers, one of whom was stuffing envelopes with event programs and honor distinctions. My name wouldn't be on any of them, not yet. Back in my room that evening, I opened the university dashboard and refreshed the email tab. A new message had arrived, marked with the university seal and bolded in blue. Top candidates for the Collins Legacy Award will be recognized at commencement. Top candidates for the Collins Legacy Award will be recognized at commencement. Every lie leaves a breadcrumb. I just needed to follow the trail. The tech incubator smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. Alex had taken over a corner near the window, his dual monitors casting a soft glow against the concrete wall. He barely looked up when I dropped a folder onto his desk. This isn't more code refactoring, is it? He muttered. Worse, I said. It's forensic accounting. He stopped typing. I opened the folder. Inside were printouts, Collins Corp's IRS 990 filing statements from their charitable foundation, scanned receipts from educational partnerships that had conveniently ballooned right after my software prototypes started gaining traction. Let me guess, Alex said, flipping through them. Your dad's been playing philanthropist with your work, trying to, I replied. I had begun to notice patterns. Names of initiatives that sounded eerily close to early Nova Learn modules, dates that overlapped too neatly with my GitHub commits. The phrase adaptive scaffolded learning had shown up 3 times in Collins Foundation reports. That phrasing was mine, down to the hyphen. Alex leaned in. This grant here, $300K to pilot student engagement AI. When was that? 3 months after my first machine learning build was functional, I said. And they never consulted me. He clicked his tongue. Classic. We dug deeper. At night in the incubator, we pored over PDFs and online archives. During the day, I slid into the university records office under the guise of donor outreach. No one questioned me. I had an active student ID and knew which doors required a smile instead of a badge. Then came the break. Jason, a second-year intern from Collins Corp who worked 2 floors down, lingered too long by the coffee machine. Your name's Avery, right? He asked. Like Avery B. I froze mid-stir. Why? He looked around, lowered his voice. I recognized one of your design maps in a deck Gregory Collins presented last month. Except, it had his name on it. What deck? Investor preview. Patent pending education tech suite. He said it was based on family-developed IP. Jason hesitated. Look, I only said something because I don't think it is his. I didn't blink. I didn't thank him either. Instead, I walked straight back to the lab and pulled my NDAs, every signed document, every email chain, with timestamps, every project folder I'd sealed during NovaLearn's early days. What Jason said haunted me. He's been filing patents under his name for years. So I searched the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office database using Gregory Collins's name. That's when I found it. Patent number 74321B, Context-Aware Modular Learning AI for Youth Engagement, filed March 2024. It mirrored my NovaLearn kernel line for line. Even the sample UI mockup in the appendix looked like my original pencil sketch from the dorm. I sat back in my chair, the bile rising. It wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. A premeditated erasure of everything I'd built, signed, sealed, and soon to be sold to investors as his legacy. No, not this time. I picked up my phone and called my patent lawyer. Layla, I said, if I can prove the date of my code commits, can we sue for fraud? If I can prove the date of my code commits, can we sue for fraud? To catch a liar, give him space to talk. The coffee shop across from Collins HQ was intentionally nondescript. No branding, no music, just the soft hum of espresso machines and the occasional clang of cups. I chose it for its silence, for the way voices carried without needing to rise, for the clean lines of sound my recorder would capture. The mic was taped just beneath my blouse collar. Jason had tested it with 3 mock conversations and 1 whisper from 20 feet away. It worked. My text to Gregory was short. Let's talk just once before commencement. No drama, just words. He replied with a time and place. That alone told me he thought he'd already won. I arrived first and sat near the window nursing an untouched cup of green tea. Jason waited outside with earbuds and pretending to scroll through his phone but watching for hand signals. His thumb would rise when the recorder picked up usable material. Gregory walked in 5 minutes late wearing a navy jacket and a tie too tight for casual. His cologne preceded him, sharp and expensive. He sat across from me without greeting. So he said, lacing his fingers, "You've had your fun. What's this about?" "I thought you might want to explain," I said. He smirked. "Explain what exactly?" "NovaLearn. The patent filings. The name you stamped across something you didn't build." His eyes didn't flicker. "I did build it. In concept. You simply executed." I blinked slowly. "So your name belongs on the work?" "Absolutely. Your emotional Avery. This is business. We preserved your ideas in a vessel the world would recognize. Without the Collins name, that code is worthless." Jason's thumb rose just slightly behind the glass. I leaned back in my chair. "It's strange," I said. "For someone who doesn't value code, you've filed a lot of it under your name." Gregory sipped his coffee without shame. "Legacy needs foundation. Your work gave me that. I gave it reach." "You mean investors?" "I mean credibility," he said, leaning forward. "Let's not pretend the world takes girls in hoodies seriously. You needed a frame. I gave it one." Jason stood now, stretching like a bored commuter. Our prearranged signal that the recording had enough. "You don't see it," I said quietly. "See what that? You just confirmed everything." Gregory tilted his head. "No one's going to care. You think they'll rally behind a dropout coder with a grudge? Or a respected corporate executive backing educational reform? I guess we'll find out." I stood pushing in my chair with deliberate calm. Gregory stayed seated, still wearing that faint look of indulgence as if he were the adult, and I was the child throwing a tantrum he could afford to entertain for one last time. Outside, Jason fell in step beside me. "You got it," he said. "I know." Back in my dorm, I plugged in the recorder, backed up the file 3 times, and sent it to Layla. No message body. Just a subject line. Proof of theft, time-stamped. Proof of theft, time-stamped. They thought the board was their kingdom. They forgot who wrote the code. The name tag on my lanyard read Alex Bennett. NovaLearn lead engineer. A lie. Yes. But it bought me clearance and a badge swipe into the exhibitor floor without a blink. Inside the Collins Corp atrium, a sleek glass elevator carried me up to the 32nd floor, where the Next Gen Education Technologies Conference was already in full swing. Rows of booths lined the main hall, some shiny and sterile, others buzzing with live demos. Mine sat quietly in the corner dressed in white vinyl, and a single phrase plastered across the front in sans serif defiance: Nova Learn, built without permission. I kept the voice low and the visuals minimal, clean infographics, no branding, just data. Every printout showed a comparison chart between two patents, one filed under Gregory Collins and the other under anonymous developer. The diagrams matched. The code snippets were identical. Dates timestamped down to the minute. No commentary, just evidence. Within 20 minutes, I'd handed out over 40 folders to wandering investors and board members. They took them curiously, casually, until the diagrams began to circulate. Board member Hughes stopped mid-step, holding one of my handouts at arm's length. "This looks like I know," muttered Mr. Trent, who just walked up behind her. "Same architecture as the demo this morning." At the far end of the hall, Gregory stepped onto a raised platform. Lights dimmed. A giant screen behind him flashed a new title: the Collins AI Platform, Legacy Meets Learning. He wore a navy suit, smiled like a statesman, and spoke with the kind of arrogance only someone deeply convinced of their invincibility could manage. "This is a moment of pride," he began. "The culmination of years of work by our family's private foundation integrating machine learning with personalized education systems." I almost laughed. He was selling my bones back to the world dressed in his skin. A few booths down, Olivia appeared, flanked by Evelyn, who was all pearls and posturing. Olivia froze when her eyes met mine. She didn't speak. She didn't nod. But I saw it: recognition. And maybe shame. I didn't give her time to process. I walked toward the main platform as Gregory concluded his pitch. He stepped forward, reaching to shake hands with a guest from an edtech think tank. I intercepted him. My hand replaced theirs. I gripped hard. "I believe this belongs to me." Gregory's smile cracked for just a second. Just long enough. Murmurs rippled. Cameras clicked. Board members narrowed their eyes at the laminated badge hanging around my neck. Behind me, I felt the stir. The curiosity shifting to suspicion. Evelyn's voice cut through the crowd. "What is she doing here?" But it wasn't Evelyn who mattered. It was the quiet board member closest to her. A man in tortoiseshell glasses, leaning over discreetly as if about to ask for tea. Instead, he whispered, "We need to look into this. We need to look into this. Push hard enough, and even family draws blood." The email hit my inbox at 11:08 p.m. Subject line in all caps: "Cease and desist. Unauthorized use of proprietary intellectual property." It was followed by two more, one from Collins Corp's legal counsel and another from their PR firm, warning of imminent reputational harm if I didn't withdraw all public-facing material related to Nova Learn. Each message had the same tone, clipped, aggressive, and full of veiled threats cloaked in legalese. I stared at the screen, pulse hammering. Then I smiled. They were scared. My doorbell rang at 11:31 p.m. No knock. Just the chime, sharp and controlled. I already knew who it was. When I opened the door, Evelyn Collins stood there in a gray wool coat and pearl earrings, holding a leather clutch and a practiced expression that tried for warmth but landed closer to pity. "Avery," she said, as if she hadn't sent someone to bury me with paperwork 30 minutes ago. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked in like it was her condo, her air, her floor beneath those 5-inch heels. "I wanted to speak in person," she said smoothly, setting her bag on my coffee table. Gregory and I think things have gotten out of hand. You've made your point. No need to escalate further." I folded my arms. "Is that what you think this is? A tantrum?" She sat delicately, brushing non-existent lint from her lap. "You're a brilliant girl. No one denies that. But this crusade you're on, it doesn't have to end in flames. I laughed. Funny. Because you're standing on the matches. Evelyn tilted her head. You could still join the firm. We'd rebrand NovaLearn under our umbrella. You'd be compensated generously, quietly. We'd clean all this up. She didn't even blink when she said it. Not a quiver in her voice. You mean I'd hand it over, I said. Let you scrub the name off and slap Collins Innovation across the front like it was yours. She didn't deny it. I leaned in. You're not here to fix anything. You're here because you know what's coming. Her face faltered then, just a flicker. Avery. No, I interrupted. Let the board see everything. Let the press see. Then we'll see whose name means more. She stood. Her fingers curled slightly around her bag. If you go through with this, it won't just affect Gregory. Or me. Olivia's worked too hard to get caught in this. She chose silence, I said. That's a choice with consequences. Evelyn's eyes hardened. For the first time in 24 years, I saw her mask slip not fully but enough. She left without another word. I walked straight to my desk, opened the encrypted folder, and attached the audio file of Gregory's confession, the one from the coffee shop where he claimed my work as his legacy. I composed 3 emails to major media outlets with tech and education desks. Subject line: exclusive material, under embargo until May 25, 10:00 a.m. Each message had the same note: verified recording. Source anonymous. Public figure disclosure. May affect commencement recognition ceremony. I hit send. The messages vanished into the ether scheduled for detonation. Minutes later, my phone lit up. Layla Patton, attorney. We're greenlit. I'll be there at the ceremony. We're greenlit. I'll be there at the ceremony. They said I wasn't family. I made their name mean something. The auditorium swelled with music as the dean's voice echoed through the grand speakers. I stood behind the side curtain of the commencement stage, half-shadowed heart not racing but trained. Like an archer. Students filed in row by row. Robes swished, tassels gleamed. Somewhere behind me, Olivia sat in the faculty row, invited as a newly minted MBA alumna. Gregory and Evelyn sat in the reserved section, beaming with the certainty of a legacy untouchable. They had no idea what was about to hit them. Dean Matthews took the stage, his voice steady and polished as always. Before we conclude today's ceremony, we have one final honor, one that represents not only excellence in education, but the impact of innovation in service of society. I didn't have to look to know Gregory's spine straightened. He probably thought he'd hear Ethan Callahan's name next, his prized surrogate son, the academic star who did everything right. Dean continued. This year marks the inaugural presentation of the Collins Legacy Innovation Award. The audience applauded. Gregory smiled. Awarded to the student whose technological contributions show exceptional promise in transforming learning accessibility across underserved communities. This honor carries a $2 million grant, the room murmured. Gregory's hands folded tightly in his lap now. I saw Evelyn lean over to whisper something. Olivia's lips parted as if bracing herself. This award was made possible by a private donor, Dean Matthews said, pausing just long enough. An alumna who asked not for credit, but for impact. Gregory blinked. His shoulders began to rise. And then, like a sliver of truth too sharp to ignore, Dean added, Today, we reveal the full story. The algorithms at the heart of NovaLearn developed on this very campus. The patent filed first in dorm rooms and late-night labs. The anonymous LLC that seeded this innovation. Gregory's jaw slackened. Was created by one of our own. Silence. Dean turned his head toward the side stage. And so it is my great honor to present the Collins Legacy Innovation Award to its founder and first recipient, Avery B. For a second, everything froze. Then came the thunder. Applause rising like a storm swell. It rolled through the auditorium, through the press row, through the stunned hush of my family's section. I stepped onto the stage back straight, face calm. Gregory's lips moved, but no sound came. Evelyn was motionless, her gaze hollow. Olivia, her eyes locked on mine, seemed caught in a private earthquake. I walked past them all. Dean handed me the plaque, a small smile flickering in his eyes. "You built something extraordinary." I took the mic. My hands didn't shake. I turned toward the crowd, but my eyes cut through to the front row. "To everyone who ever said legacy is a birthright," I began. "Let me tell you what legacy really means. Let me tell you what legacy really means. When you light the match, be ready for the whole forest to burn." I stood alone behind the podium, the weight of everything, every rejection, every sleepless night, every quiet moment of resolve concentrated in the lights, burning hot against my skin. The audience was still clapping when I raised my hand, silencing them with a calm that wasn't performance. It was conviction. I want to talk about what it means to build something that no one believes in except you. I didn't look at my parents, not yet. When I started NovaLearn, I didn't have a name people recognized. I didn't have legacy donors or family clout or a resume designed to impress gatekeepers. What I had was code. What I had was vision. Camera lights blinked like fireflies in a swarm. I spotted 2 drones hovering near the ceiling, broadcasting the feed to the university's website, to social media, to reporters clutching press badges in the wings. My voice didn't shake. I built NovaLearn in a dorm room, fueled by every time I was told my ideas were software fluff or that I'd never carry the weight of a real legacy. I watched my patents get filed under someone else's name. I watched the very people who said they believed in education turn around and use mine as leverage without consent. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The silence between words became heavier than the words themselves. I stayed anonymous, because I wanted the work to speak first. But now that the world is watching, let me be very clear. NovaLearn was not a family project. It was not funded by a trust. It was not handed to me. It was built by someone you said didn't belong. I let my gaze drift to the front row. Gregory's jaw was locked. His face had taken on the color of marble stone, cold, artificially smooth, but beginning to crack. "My name on university records is Avery B.," I said. "Because I legally removed Collins months ago. Not out of spite, but clarity. And yet I chose to fund the Collins Legacy Award not to honor the people who dismissed me, but to reclaim what that name could mean. Innovation, access, integrity, gasps. Reporters scribbled faster. One student near the back raised their phone, then whispered, "She paid for it." All of it. I pushed on. Through the Morrison Foundation and NovaLearn Technologies, I donated $2 million to support underrepresented students in tech who think differently, who build from nothing, who, like me, were told they didn't belong at the table. Gregory stood. I didn't stop. I built a seat for others, the very seat that was empty at my own graduation. His face was crimson now. Evelyn reached for his sleeve, but he shook her off. Olivia's expression had hardened into something unreadable, like someone watching a structure fall that she secretly hoped wouldn't survive. The final paragraph had waited in my chest for years. "You told me I wasn't family, but I made your name mean something more than shame." Applause broke through like glass shattering, not polite, not ceremonial, raw, loud, immediate. Some people stood, some gasped, and the cameras didn't miss a single reaction. Gregory tried to leave, but Dean Matthews had already crossed the stage, voice steady as steel. He turned to my father and leaned slightly toward the mic so it picked up every syllable. "We'll be reviewing the awards association with your name. We'll be reviewing the awards association with your name. A legacy built on lies doesn't crumble, it detonates." I barely made it to the reception before my phone started vibrating like it was trying to escape my clutch. Mentions, alerts, headlines. The fallout had already begun. Breaking: Collins Tech Empire stole from daughter sources. Confirm my photo on the graduation stage mid-speech was already plastered beneath bold font accusations. Collins heiress exposes tech theft. NovaLearn's founder drops bombshell at commencement. Every article pushed the truth further into the bloodstream of the internet. I didn't need to click. I had written this story with every sleepless night and every slight I swallowed whole. Across the quad, Gregory and Evelyn disappeared into a black sedan flanked by two Collins Corp advisors. Olivia trailed behind but didn't enter. She stood frozen, phone in hand, staring at me as though we were meeting for the first time. Hours later, the fallout became formal. The Collins Corp board summoned an emergency meeting. I didn't need to be in the room to feel the heat. I had Jason, the intern turned ally, texting updates like dispatches from a war zone. Stocks down 6% in an hour. Hughes looks like she's aged a decade. Trent's already calling lawyers. Back at my apartment, Alex paced, flipping between news channels. "They're bleeding out loud," he muttered. "And you haven't even filed the fraud suit yet." I was watching the screen when Olivia posted. "Proud to call her my sister finally." It was a single sentence, but it cracked something I didn't know had gone brittle inside me. The photo she attached wasn't of us. It was of my NovaLearn whiteboard filled with code from back when we still shared the same dorm building during undergrad. She'd taken that photo without me noticing. I stared at it longer than I should have. Jason's next message hit harder. "Got it." Evelyn knew. "Found internal emails where she flagged your patents as reassigned, told legal to bury the timestamps." I stared at the screenshot he forwarded. It was real. Evelyn had seen the work. She'd watched it blossom and handed it over like stolen fruit. She wasn't an accomplice. She was an architect. My lawyer was already preparing the fraud case, but this changed everything. Now the damage was no longer just emotional. It was federal. Jason added, "Also," Gregory just screamed in the boardroom. "She was a mistake I funded." The whole room heard. I closed my laptop. No one should have to hear that sentence even secondhand. The next update didn't come through my phone. It arrived in a headline on national television: Collins removed from Board of Educational Foundation following scandal. Legal action pending. I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. This wasn't victory. It was excavation. I was digging out everything they'd buried me under. In the next clip, Evelyn was caught leaving Collins Corp alone, her phone pressed tight to her cheek, jaw clenched like steel. The reporter's voiceover filled in the blanks. Sources confirm Evelyn Collins received a subpoena for fraud relating to intellectual property misrepresentation. And then I saw it. A single fleeting frame that froze me in place. She looked sideways toward someone off camera. Her expression cracked with something brittle, pleading almost, but Gregory never turned back. He walked ahead, ignoring her. He'd always made sure she was the one who carried the fall when the walls shook. Even now, she hadn't realized she'd been just another pawn, another shield. And now the shield had broken. Evelyn receives subpoena for fraud. She looks toward Gregory, who avoids her eyes. "They tried to burn me out of the will." I rewrote the estate. The email from the lawyer sat unopened for hours. I stared at the subject line, "Probate Inquiry, Gregory Collins Estate," as if opening it would somehow resurrect everything I thought I'd already buried. The man who swore I wasn't family anymore had still at some point written me into his legacy, and then tried to erase me from it. I finally clicked. There it was, in black and white. Gregory Collins had originally listed me as a secondary beneficiary in his corporate trust alongside Olivia. The change to remove me was dated just 3 months after I announced I wouldn't join Collins Corp post-graduation. Disobedience, the lawyer called it delicately, like I was a wayward intern, not his daughter. "You may have standing," the attorney said over Zoom, "especially now that shareholders are questioning the legitimacy of his asset transfers." I almost laughed. Legitimacy. The man had spent years stealing my work, laundering it through polished speeches and marketing decks, while telling the world his genius was hereditary. The call was interrupted by a soft ping, Ethan. I owe you an apology, he wrote. If you need a witness to how NovaLearn was built, I'm in. I didn't reply right away. Ethan had spent most of our college life pretending not to notice I existed, but maybe even ghosts become visible when the light shifts. That afternoon, I met Olivia for tea. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I half expected her to defend them, to beg for silence, but instead she placed a folder in front of me, one I didn't recognize. Dad drafted a private memo 2 years ago, she said. He called you the family variable. He didn't mean it nicely. Inside were notes about splitting the family trust based on demonstrated loyalty. Olivia took a shaky breath. He was grooming me to be the legacy, but I never asked for that. And I didn't stop him either. I nodded. Silence is complicity. She flinched. Later that night, Evelyn requested a video call. She looked composed, even in disgrace. I'll make this simple, she began. Help minimize my sentence, testify that I wasn't aware of the fraudulent filings, and I'll sign everything over. Name, properties, patents, whatever you want. I stared at her, wondering if she truly believed she could buy my forgiveness like another portfolio acquisition. You want me to save you after everything? I'm giving you an opportunity. No, you're offering me hush money dressed as redemption. Her mouth twitched, but she said nothing more. We ended the call in silence. It wasn't hard to decide. The next morning, I met with my attorney, laid out every file, every email, every time-stamped commit. Evelyn's fingerprints were all over the deception. She hadn't just stood by, she'd helped orchestrate the symphony. By noon, the court had everything they needed. A week passed. Then the freeze order arrived. By direction of the Massachusetts Superior Court, all Collins Corp assets are hereby subject to legal hold pending fraud investigation. I stared at the paper for a long time. It wasn't joy I felt. It wasn't even triumph. It was stillness. Like the ground had stopped shifting beneath me just long enough to realize I hadn't burned the legacy. I'd rewritten it. They'd tried to erase me from the estate, but I'd turned their entire empire into an exhibit of what happens when you bet against the wrong daughter. Court sends notice, asset freeze on Collins Corp pending fraud investigation. Sometimes justice is a quiet room, not a courtroom. The cafe on campus hadn't changed, same chipped mugs, same overwatered succulents, same clatter of students talking like the world was waiting for their ideas. But I was different now. The fire in my chest had quieted into something else, clarity maybe. I sat near the window, laptop open, watching spring bleed into early summer through the glass. My inbox had 143 new messages, and for once, none of them made my stomach turn. I opened the first video clip from a high school senior in Atlanta holding up a whiteboard with an algorithm she'd built using NovaLearn's adaptive modules. I watched your speech. You made me believe it was okay to dream out loud. The next one was from a young father in the Philippines. Your platform helped me finish my certification. My daughter called me a hero. Thank you. One after another, they poured in, students, educators, strangers, who now saw me not as the forgotten daughter of a legacy family, but as the architect of something new, something useful, something their lives could bend toward. Alex dropped into the chair across from me, a little breathless. Series B has officially kicked off, he said, dropping a USB drive on the table. The valuation's already tripled. We're not a startup anymore. We're a standard. I blinked at him. You okay? He laughed. Not even remotely. But it's the good kind of overwhelmed. Jason joined us a few minutes later, 2 coffees in hand. You've started a movement, he said, sliding one my way. People in EdTech aren't asking how to copy Collins anymore. They're asking how to build like NovaLearn. I sipped the coffee slowly. It tasted warmer than I remembered. Later that afternoon, I met Olivia on a rooftop in Palo Alto. The sun was dipping low, the city bathed in gold. She wore jeans for once, no heels, no pearls. Just Olivia. I spent so long trying to be the good daughter. she said, staring straight ahead that I forgot to be your sister. She didn't look at me when she said it. That made it feel more honest. I didn't answer with words, just leaned over and rested my head on her shoulder for a second. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't forgetting. It was space. And sometimes, that's all healing needs to start. That evening, I took a detour. Drove through the old neighborhood past the house I'd once imagined escaping from, then spent years trying to prove I belonged to. The porch lights were off. I sat in the driveway for a few long minutes, engine humming like a lullaby I didn't want. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even get out of the car. I just looked. Not at the house. At the girl I used to be inside it. The one who thought silence could earn love. The one who built futures in her head because no one would build them with her. I whispered a quiet thank you to her for surviving long enough to become me. Then I shifted into drive and didn't look back. My phone buzzed before I made it 3 blocks. Stanford wants to host your keynote. Theme legacy. Every single view means a meal for someone in need. Just by watching this video, you're giving warmth, hope, and a full plate to those less fortunate. So watch now, share now, subscribe to the channel, and let's spread love together. I didn't just win the scholarship, I funded the future. The lights were soft, but the energy in the room crackled with electricity. Stanford's auditorium was at capacity, rows of students, startup founders, professors, and a few skeptics who had once brushed me aside now sat quietly, eyes fixed on the stage. The timer in the corner blinked 00:03. 3 minutes until I stepped up. I adjusted the lapel mic, breathed in slow and deep. Olivia stood beside me, clipboard in hand, looking like she'd been born to run operations. Maybe she had. But today she wasn't the golden daughter anymore. She was my CFO. "You ready?" she asked, voice low but calm. I nodded. I've never been readier. As I stepped onto the stage, the applause rose, not polite, not rehearsed, but earned. The spotlight was warm, not scorching, not blinding, just present. Real. I smiled. When I was in college, someone told me I was wasting the family name on a toy degree. A few years later, I used that same name without permission to fund 200 students through Nova Learn. Laughter, then silence. They told me legacy came from bloodlines, from inheritance, from being invited to the table. But legacies aren't inherited. They're built. I walked across the stage, slowly letting the silence land between phrases. We talk so much about innovation in this industry, new tools, better algorithms, but rarely do we talk about ethical resilience, about building things that matter without approval, about creating platforms not for power, but for people. Images flashed behind me, screenshots from NovaLearn classrooms in rural schools, scholarship recipients, quotes from students who now interned at NASA, Google, or had launched companies of their own. The NovaLearn Fellowship will now expand to 6 countries. We've just closed Series B. And I'm standing here today not just as the founder of a company, but as proof that rejection doesn't define you, your response does. Scattered cheers. I let them come. My story isn't unique because I was disowned or dismissed. It's because I didn't let that dismissal shape me. Instead, I shaped something larger. I paused at center stage. Success doesn't make you part of a legacy. Integrity does. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy with thought, reflection. Then, like a wave breaking all at once, a standing ovation. From the back row to the front, people stood. Not just for what I'd built, but for what it meant. No one mentioned Gregory. No one asked about Evelyn. Their names had become footnotes in someone else's story. Mine. I walked off stage past the curtains toward the green room where Olivia waited with a quiet smile. She handed me a bottle of water and a small envelope. Avery scrawled in familiar, angular handwriting. She said nothing, just held it out. I turned it over. Postmarked yesterday. No return address, but I didn't need one. I sat down, placed the letter on the table, and stood up without opening it. There was nothing in those pages I hadn't already heard. I didn't need their explanations or regrets. I had outgrown the need for closure. I had given myself something better, a future not shaped by their absence but by my own design. Avery places it on the table and walks away.